Welcome to another episode of B2B Marketing Futures, the podcast for B2B marketers sponsored by Exact. Today we are asking a question that I think a lot of revenue teams are starting to feel quite a lot. When AI can increasingly run parts of the go-to-market, what do humans still own? AI is already changing how teams identify accounts, generate content, prioritize outreach, support sellers, and automate workflows. In theory, that should make sales and marketing faster, more aligned, and more efficient. But in practice, it also raises some bigger questions. If AI can produce more content, surface more signals, and automate more activity, who decides what actually matters? Who owns the judgment around strategy, messaging, customer understanding, prioritization, and governance? And how do we make sure AI helps revenue teams focus rather than simply creating more noise? That's what we will explore today. But before we get into the discussion, I'd love to hear a short introduction on yourselves. So maybe Kaylin, would you like to give us a short sentence on yourself?
Yeah, I would love to. And this is such an exciting topic, Joaquin, and a mammoth of a conversation. So hopefully we can dive into it more today. Caitlin Crawford, I have around 15 years of go-to-market sales leadership operating experience. Currently, I've been with Outreach, which is a true agentic AI platform for revenue teams. So very timely conversation within the role that I am in today as chief of staff to our go-to-market and my direct CRO. So really excited to dive in as an operator versus just theoretical AI commentary, but excited to be here.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Brooke, welcome.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. It is a mammoth of a topic. I feel like every single meeting, it comes up in some way. But Brooke Huckabee, I lead the revenue enablement division at SaaS. I've been at SaaS for close to 18 years, and a majority of that time was in marketing, product marketing. But about 6 years ago, I transitioned to the enablement world. So my team is responsible for ensuring that all of our customer-facing roles have what they need to be successful. And so in the world of AI, that is entering the building, and it is our job to make sure that it's being used efficiently, but also in a responsible way. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much. And Christy, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, AI is definitely the topic, isn't it? Like I can think about not too long ago where it was just SaaS or the cloud, right?
And
so now
the new evolution.
Yeah, what type of AI? Is it agents? What are you really doing? So anyway, I'm Christy Marble. I have been a chief marketing officer and head of marketing for both consumer brands way back to Sallie Mae when they were moving into consumer lending, and most recently B2B brands ranging from SAP Concur to Vizier to Pantheon, and most recently to Site.
Awesome, Chris. Welcome all. Thank you all for those great introductions. Okay, so I think that gives us a really strong starting point. Let's begin with the central question of the episode, because AI is clearly getting better at the executional side of GTM, right? Finding accounts, generating content, summarizing calls, suggesting next steps, and helping teams move much faster. But the speed is not the same as judgment. So I'd like to start with where you think the human role becomes more important, not less. When the AI can create more options, more signals, and more activity, what are the decisions that still need a human in the loop?
Yeah, it's a big one. When AI runs go-to-market, what do humans still own? And my logic actually kind of flips the topic a little bit to when go-to-market runs AI, right? And I want to offer that suggestion because in answer to your question, Joaquin, my opinion is that automation insights, all of that is and will be and will continue to be table stakes, right? It's about the judgment layer. It's about the strategy layer and the trust human element that's going to be really critical in the way that we operate and drive these AI teammates and toolmates, right? So we're in that today. And in the world that I live in, Brooke, you spoke on your background, which gave off a few signals and light bulbs that we are customer zero of our own tool, right? So we are in it. Like we are drinking the champagne, we're selling it, we're pitching it, we're consuming it. And a lot of what we speak about is these AI agentic tools running in the background such that the AE or the seller can intervene with a strategy layer, right? And make the assumption. And that's such a critical component when we think about the future of AI, not replacing humans, but actually adding more value and more output, right? So certainly rolling is changing, but I don't think it means that AI is going to run us. I think it's the inverse.
Caitlin, you had me at champagne, so let's start there.
Yes, girl.
But I say to my team all the time, AI can read data and it can read and provide us insights, but it can't read the room. It can't see the emotional aspects of what's going on in the room. We're still at the end of the day working with humans. And those buyers have pressures. They have competing priorities. There's internal politics. There's org changes. There's all of the things that we navigate as humans. And while AI can read the data, it can't read the room. And so when we look at that, that's that human element that we have to keep. You mentioned trust. I think trust is, at the end of this conversation, it's probably going to be the common thread throughout the entire podcast, because AI just can't build that trust and it can't build that layer. So I think that's across the entire customer journey, from prospecting all the way through campaigns. And Christy, I'm interested in hearing your perspective from a marketing perspective. But when a seller gets in front of the buyer, it's that relationship building that's going to count. And we have to make sure that there's consistency through every single one of those interactions within that customer journey. And we have to make sure that the systems are connected to not have a disjointed experience, because there's different agents doing different things in the entire organization. So Christy, I don't know from a marketing standpoint if that resonates, because marketing and sales are interacting through that entire journey.
Absolutely. And it is a journey. I'm glad you raised that, Brooke, because I think that's one of the things that can be lost. I think the customer journey, the buyer's journey, but I'll take it all the way to the customer journey, because every single customer is a human. That even in the B2B world, there are people buying, and at least we are selling to people, and trying to provide that positioning, the value prop to people. So it's super important that we do have a customer journey that we've really thought through and that we understand, because it gets to the point of what is unique to each company. And what is unique to each company is the customer experience that you need to deliver and the value that they receive from your particular product or service. And so that's what I worry about, is when we disintermediate the customer experience with AI, then what? And Caitlin, I think in your company's specialty, I've heard a lot in marketing about removing, and I guess we can save money, we can use AI to replace the BDRs. Okay, then what? Because the most annoying thing that I'm seeing happen a lot is you're trying to reach a company, especially online companies, and you just can't. You can't actually speak to a human. So the buying process is a real telling moment, because if you're trying to buy something and you've gotten to AI and you've used the chatbots on the website, which I love, and they're highly successful for marketers. But when you want to talk to a human, you want to talk to them right now. And if you don't, you go to another company, because it's that fast that you can go look at the competitor. So I still want to talk to a BDR, or I want to talk to a salesperson. But again, Caitlin, what if we take our BDRs out of the organization? Then our salespeople who are negotiating our big deals have to step away from a big deal because someone's online right now and has a question. That just doesn't seem like a good customer experience.
Christy, you're so spot on. And I'll kind of touch on something here. So for those who know outreach, this is certainly not an organizational plug, but just a point of clarification on the BDR component. We get asked this a ton because we grew up in the prospecting outbound motion space. Now today, our platform and what I leverage daily with my CRO and the CRO conversations we're having with our customers and prospects is agentic tooling across the entire go-to-market create to close path, right? So you've got retention agents, you've got opportunity management agents, you've got meeting prep, you've got smart coaching, deal insights, really the whole swath of what go-to-market touches. However, we do still keep coming back to this SDR question, Christy, and I'll tell you why. As we all know, pipeline is queen. And what I mean by that is we share that number, Brooke, right? That's the CMO, that's the CRO number. We really need to be in bed there, and not to skip to the next question, but materially growing and in a strategic way that BDR, SDR, or AE pipeline owned output is so important in the way they interact with agents today. So this is not a replacement of humans, whether it's your AE or your SDR. It's a strengthening of the strategy layer. And it's what more can they do? And in fact, my vision is like with that SDR org that you have, they can go stronger in verticalization, right? They can go stronger in industry, and they can actually own and manipulate their own SDR agents under them, right? And so it's just this beautiful evolution of the way that we think about go-to-market.
Yeah, and I do think, to play on the BDR, we work with that team a lot from an enablement perspective because we have a full prospecting program. And so when you think about the tools that are available for them today, from training and coaching to AI role play and things like that, we're still enabling them in a way to do their job better. AI might be opening the door with the customer, whether that's through chatbots, website, any type of prospecting activities. Sure. But again, going back to that level of trust is what's going to close the deal. So I think that we've got to figure out how we walk side by side throughout that customer journey with AI, letting it take on some of the activities that are repetitive, and letting the human focus on those value-based conversations that will ultimately build relationships and build trust.
Retweet. Structure who needs to be in the deal too. Because what I'm seeing is this kind of jump to buyer as if a buyer is one person. And a buyer in most B2B deals, if you're working a very, very small business, you can have one person that's making a decision, maybe a business owner. But if you're in the enterprise space, I think 6 Sense, I'll quote back a couple of years ago, I think they said 16. And I can tell you, I've validated that at multiple companies, that if you're not interacting in the enterprise space, 16, 19. We had one deal recently at my prior company that was 39 people. But once we had all those activities going, which we could see thanks to AI tools, we knew we were the one. We were the top. Maybe they were in a bid with 3 other companies. We knew that we were the one because there were so many people interacting with our content. And that's where the beauty of AI marketing and all the sales, all the rest of the go-to-market actions are super valuable. By that time, we had people in the customer success team already introduced. So you could start to see those interactions, not just with content, but with people. And that's, I think, the real power of AI.
The information that we're able to arm our sellers with from the buying signals. You talk about the different decision makers being able to get out relationship maps through the networks that they have within the organization. All of those things are just like leveling them up.
Because when you have that, then you can show the board, yeah, this is a real deal. Because those big enterprise deals you've been talking to, no doubt, multiple board meetings, right?
It's data certified at that point.
That's
absolutely.
Right. And you have to win that deal. And so now you can start to show them the data, which isn't that operational day-to-day data. It is the big strategic data that shows we're getting signals that would show us, and our sellers are telling us this, and we're talking to these people inside of the company.
It's so interesting, Christy, when you were talking about like the depth of the buying committee. I know that's not the nomenclature of this podcast, but we've been engaging this conference season. We were at Gartner last week and Forrester the week before, and just so much discussion around the depth of the buying committee and how many individuals that touches now, and the need for this knowledge layer, right, to be super infused in all of your agents. Because ultimately, yes, Brooke, there are so many signals, but then there's drowning in noise ultimately at some level. And so conversation that we have a lot in-house is, how do we distill the noise to have an execution model, right, that governs and harnesses all of your agentic workflows such that you're not in just disparate like AI point solution, like tooling is now becoming AI point solution tooling, right? And so making sure you have a really strong, whether it be a platform or at the very least an execution operating model to combine all of that is the whole next topic.
Exactly, because there is this risk that every team start using AI in slightly different ways, right? You can end up with inconsistent messaging, too much content, unclear governance, and at the end of the day, a fragmented customer experience, in my opinion. So I would love to hear like how you think revenue teams can avoid AI becoming just another layer of complexity, and how you stay aligned.
Yeah, it's kind of the Wild West right now, where I think some of the most, I'll call them dangerous, but that's kind of extreme because I have not been in a business that's aiming rockets at the moon or performing surgery, right? But it is dangerous from a marketing, messaging, and brand standpoint. It's dangerous from definitely from controlling the message, but also from not releasing information that you're not ready to release. So if I can go old school, but if you remember the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe that was so protected by Colonel Sanders allegedly in a vault kind of thing, that's all of our software, right? That's all of the things that we're launching. And the number of people you have inside of your company that are involved in a new product launch or in a naming decision or things like that, if they're all out there in OpenAI searching, doing their research, they're actually feeding the model. They're putting your information out there into AI before. So you're not controlling your secret sauce. You're not controlling your recipe anymore. So that mentioned governance, that governance is super important. And the observation I have is people are moving so fast with AI movements that the governance step, my hypothesis, not to insult any IT team, but my hypothesis is that IT cannot keep up, because if they do, they're going to be constricting you, slowing you down. And no organization is like, you're going to win. The people who can move the fastest are going to win over IT. I hate to say it, or over the governance in most places, in most organizations. So even in the most highly regulated organizations, that's a big challenge, is how do we move fast? How do we protect our proprietary assets and our competitive advantage?
Christy, was it your quote or Brooke's that was some of my prep work, that guardrails should be up, not handcuffs when it comes to governance?
It might have been.
Or maybe it was OpenAI serving me that. Could have been all three. But I do think it's a fine line, right? And we're seeing a lot of operators win money, lose money, right? And really get lost in the sauce, to come back to your KFC analogy, and what is right and wrong, because we're blazing the trails. We're flying the plane as we build it. And so I think something that I'm starting to see, just to give more of an operating lens in association to the criticality of governance too, and to taking the right strategic step, is new roles coming up. And so I'm seeing like an internal AI architect sitting under the RevOps house. And Brooke, I'm sure you're seeing this too in the enablement space, because they blend together very nicely. I'm actually on our AI like transformation committee. We're seeing that pop up left and right, which gives people some freedom, but just enough that we are empowering and infusing them with AI, but it's not through the organizational cracks, if you will. And then we're also really seeing kind of that advisory role come up, that go-to-market VP of transformation that can go out in the field and then say, based on our tooling or our platform or what have you, these are our recommendations on how you can seed this in and like add the operation to the automation or to the execution in the smartest way, because it is still going to be organizationally specific in how you consume those agents. So I'm just seeing the governance pop up, and then to marry that with these new rolling kind of in committees.
I was actually going to go back to something that Christy was talking about when we talk about the data that we're putting out there. I also feel like we need to concentrate on the data that we're putting into it, because I think a lot of people are creating, and I love the innovation. I love the creativity that's happening, the problem solving. Here's a problem and I want to fix it with AI. But it's happening across many organizations, and they may or may not be talking to each other. They may or may not be pulling from the appropriate data sources. They could be out there pulling from the World Wide Web. However, we have internal data sources that are validated and governed, and we have confidence in their accuracy. But is that person in this division over here, are they aware of this data source? Are they pulling from it? Are they using the API? There's just so much uncertainty around data. And then from a use case perspective, we could have people in several organizations, RevOps, revenue enablement, marketing, sales, trying to solve for the same use case. And they're all doing it slightly different. And that goes back to that consistency across the customer journey, Christy, is if that's what the customer is feeling, is these inconsistencies of messaging because they're all pulling from different data sources, that is a very bad customer experience and doesn't help us in the end build that trust that we talk about is so incredibly important in closing deals. And so from a governance perspective, putting my enablement hat on, we have to govern the messaging. We have to make sure that we're governing the content, that it's seamless and that it's consistent throughout. Prompt governance, you talked about new roles popping up, prompt engineers and prompt governance, data governance. All of that is going to help us govern the customer experience. But those are all inputs that we have to get right, because right now, to your point, Christy, it's the wild, wild west. And we have a million committees and councils that are popping up. It's like, governance, we've got to do it now. And I'm part of them too, Caitlin. It's so important. And I just keep going back to that well-governed aspect of all of the inputs to the customer journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that. I think between the three of us, I tend to lean a little bit more the challenger always in the sense of I don't think the data is ever going to be perfect. And I think inaction is also something that we're seeing. I think the three of us are very AI forward thinking, but there certainly could be listeners that are not right at the tip of the spear there and have a lot of hesitation to just dip their toe in the water. And I think I posted this the other day, like saying like, I can't start until hygiene and governance is complete is like saying I need to be fit before I go to the gym. Like we've got to meet them halfway, right? So I think it's both sides of the coin, but yes, certainly, having that harness framework is critical.
I also don't think that the organizations that are going to be the most successful with AI are the ones that are adopting it the fastest. I do think that it will be the ones that are being more conscious about the customer experience and those touch points. So they may not be the fastest. They're not going to be the slowest, but I think that speed, we can scale risk just as fast as we can scale value from an AI perspective.
Sure.
So I think that we have to have that balance. I'm a Libra, so there's balance all over the place. But we have to have that balance between the two.
I would love to hear, like, if you could share any examples of how you could break that customer experience without having humans intervening in that experience. Because you could think that, like, showing multiple ads to someone is something good, or having more touch points, sending them more emails, right? But I don't know if you can really break customer experience with those activities, or are actually when you have a human in the loop, maybe, I don't know, with the wrong message at the wrong time. What do you think about that? If you could give examples, it would be great.
Well, let me give one example. Prior to AI, one of the most challenging things for marketers who were not a specific industry niche, but who were focused in multiple verticals, so selling to multiple different industries, was to create content that spoke specifically to the buyer as me, as my vertical. And let me give you 3 different examples. So people in manufacturing have very, very distinctly different roles than people who were in tech, working for software companies, versus people who are in hospitals, versus people who are in education, colleges and education, or in the nonprofit or public sector space. So for instance, if you send something about generating revenue and shareholder value and all of that, and you send that to a public sector company, someone in the US government or someone in higher ed, you've totally hit the wrong message. And so that's one of those messages that you get and especially if you've been in a deal cycle. So we talked about the customer journey. So you're deep in a deal cycle and a seller, God forbid, to you, the AE that hopefully you've created a relationship with, and all of a sudden they send a message to you that is totally generic, which talks about revenue, and you're in higher ed. And you're like, what? Now you've lost your trust, as Brooke said earlier, in that buyer. So the beautiful thing is now with AI, that marketers can now help the whole go-to-market process and journey by tailoring your messaging. So your corporate messaging, by tailoring it to each industry, each vertical that you're in, and making sure that you've got it right. So while you're selling a similar product, the value prop is different in higher ed than it is for hospitals, than it is for public sector, than it is for someone who's selling software. So that's somewhere that AI is really powerful, that can do things so much faster, literally in days for people, for marketers, and for the whole go-to-market process that used to take us like 6 months. Like verticalizing, just 5 years ago, if Caitlin would come to me and I was her CMO and she'd be like, oh, we need to verticalize all the content, I'd be like, oh my God, this is a major corporate initiative. It's going to cost me, I'm going to have to hire all these contractors, or I'm going to have to pivot my whole team, and it's going to take me 6 months to do 3 verticals. Is that okay for you, Caitlin? She'd be like, no, we're going to lose our competitive advantage. With AI, it would be not an issue at all. We could very quickly tailor, run our personas, create rubrics, make sure that our content is effective, and even produce agents so that every place in the go-to-market process, we can tune the messaging so that a seller or whoever doesn't, and we don't automate sending the wrong message and creating and breaking the customer experience. There's probably better examples that you guys have, but
I'll just be kind of broad here. I think it's very good in early stages of the sales cycle. From the initial chat on a website through some of the prospecting campaigns, you talked about being able to create campaigns from a marketing perspective, then taking that and translating it and building out a cadence within their prospecting system and say, saying, hey, I want to take this marketing message, be consistent with the message, but now I need it to be a one-to-one from a seller to a buyer. Those early stages, I think that it's really great in helping bring some efficiencies there in that process.
I think I land somewhere in the middle, but I think you provided a really great example, Christy. Often what we're speaking about, Joaquin, isn't like this new process of go-to-market. It's just we're adding AI into what we've done in go-to-market and what we've seen work. And certainly if we're moving too quickly with AI, to Brooke's point, then we are going to rupture that trust component that's so critical about our ICP and our segmentation and our persona and all of the items that Christy spoke to. So I think if you apply the strategy layer to say, all right, here's an agent that's going to be doing my segmentation for me, and then I'm gut checking the validity of that, and then maybe I'm using an inbound NPS scoring agent to serve up conversations I should be having. Like, there's a very tactical way to go about leveraging these agents. But if we're in like a spray and pray methodology with agents, or we think about them in such a basic function, you're going to abuse the customer prospect relationship just like you could prior to AI, to Christy's point. So it's the evolution. If the foundation's not there from a strategy standpoint, AI is not going to fix for you.
100%. All right. We've covered a lot today, where AI is changing GTM, what humans still need to own, how AI affects sales and marketing alignment, and why governance still matters, right? And I would love to hear like one advice that you would love to give to a B2B revenue leader trying to adopt AI without losing the human judgment that makes GTM effective.
Mine goes back to trust and that human interaction. At the end of the day, we're still selling to another human that's experiencing, whether it's challenges or internal politics or changes within change management. So I think at the end of the day, the goal isn't about automating every single customer interaction. We talked about early stages it being a great enhancement there, but we really also need to protect those moments where there's the human interaction. Those are the moments that matter the most in building trust. So having that balance, again, going back to that balance of where is AI helping and where do we really need that human element where we're building trust with the customer. So having that balance and not feeling like we have to use AI for everything, but identifying those critical parts of the customer journey where it can enhance the experience and help make our sales organization more efficient and effective.
You're early in your AI adoption journey and you don't have every single committee already stood up, I think you need to take a look at the business and your lowest hanging fruit opportunities. Where are your areas of weakness that you really want to drive cohesive strategy around for improvement? Maybe you have a pipeline problem. Maybe you have a close rate problem. And of course, I'm now speaking from more of a sales lens, but identify that operating issue. And of course, you can boil the ocean with agents. And there are so many signals, and really those are again, those insights are going to be kind of table stakes in the way that we think about scaling. So I would say identify that problem set and build your operating model around it. Find the AI tooling platform that's going to cohesively drive real execution, not just serve you insights, but actually act on your behalf, and then discern how much human interaction do you want. Right? Are you in a position where you still have an operating model where you really want the human fully engaged and then just some automation? Or are you in a middle phase where you kind of want to delegate some to the AI tooling, but own more of the reins? Or is there an area that's very low value sweat equity where all of that workflow can be owned by the agentic solutioning? And it can be only the hyper strategy layer that you jump in on. Maybe you're just jumping in for the meeting. Maybe you're just jumping in for that one engagement because account surfacing, competitive intel, all these insights can be driven and guide you to where you need to be. And you can just intervene at that moment. And then I think just a couple of like words of wisdom that human time is still the most expensive resource in revenue, and AI should help us where it compounds. And so it's got to be used wisely, and it's not going to fix a broken go-to-market. It's really going to scale it.
Yeah. And mine would be, maybe it's kind of a bit right in the middle, which is when you come down to prioritizing either how your teams are using AI or how personally you're using AI inside of your company, apply the sniff test of how is this going to help our customers? What's the biggest way we can differentiate by making a difference for our customers? Or what's the biggest point of friction for our customers? and use AI to remove that friction. So prioritize each of those things and use AI for that first.
Yeah, and I'll add, there are some great AI tools out there that can help enhance the human interaction. I spoke about the AI role play and training and coaching and things like that. AI doesn't just mean, the tooling doesn't just mean that it's doing the interaction for you.
That's right.
We can help coach and enable sales teams through the use of AI and be able to scale some of our best practices a lot better and a lot faster through the AI tools that exist out there. So I do think there's kind of the world of AI tools that can do part of your job for you so that you can focus on the high value. And then there are the AI tools that can enhance your human interactions through training and coaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the amazing thing is that you can design those tools. But first, I think you need to answer those basic questions that you, Christy, were mentioning, right? You need to really be focused on the customer. Well, thank you so much, Christy, Caitlin, and Brooke. This was a great conversation. I really like how we moved beyond the usual AI hype and got into the practical questions of where humans still add value. For everyone listening, thank you so much for joining this episode. If you like this, please share this with your colleagues and give us a like on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much and speak soon.